Rumors of a successor to the Nintendo Switch started doing the rounds early in that console's life. While the Switch Lite and the OLED model tweaked the base offering, it's taken over 8 years for the proper follow-up to emerge. Nintendo Switch 2 takes the handheld hybrid formula and enhances it in all the ways you'd expect. It's naturally more powerful, bigger, bolder, and undeniably better, but it's the little things that combine to make Switch 2 feel like a next-gen machine. The question is it worth the price, especially if you're sitting on a massive backlog of Switch games already? So, what do you get in the box? Well, firstly, you have to pay for this box, which is priced at $449.99, £395.99, and €469.99. For that, you get a handheld hybrid system with a 7.9-inch 1080p LCD touchscreen with HDR and variable refresh rate up to 120 FPS in supported games. Connected to a TV or monitor via the dock, the visuals are boosted up to 4K via upscaling, so the motion is smoother and the image sharper. Much like the Switch, the Joy-Con 2 controllers detach for convenient local co-op multiplayer, although they attach magnetically this time. The controllers feature improved HD rumble plus a mouse mode ability that activates when you turn the controllers on the side. Also in the box, you get an ultra high-speed HDMI cable, 2 Joy-Con 2 straps, a Joy-Con 2 grip, a brand new dock with a fan, and the AC adapter with a separate USB-C cable that connect the adapter to the system. After discarding the surprisingly dinky box, it's the weight of the console and the audio that grabs you when you power on. Nintendo pointed at the improved speakers in the initial reveal, and they've got a roomy quality that's immediately apparent as you go between setup screens. The system transfer was painless, although transferring a sizable library will take a while, and the onboard 256GB of storage may not hold all your old games, certainly not when you add a few Switch 2 exclusives to the library. It feels very familiar but pleasingly snappier. The menu screens, particularly the eShop, is massively improved from its predecessor. When the general menu and button layout is essentially the same, just a little curvier, sleeker, and shinier, you'll notice every small difference to begin with. Going back to Switch 1 after this feels like wading through mud while dragging a small motorcycle. We fired up Tears of the Kingdom before downloading the Switch 2 upgrade, and the small Switch logo in the bottom right looked so fuzzy that we blinked several times thinking our eyes had something in them. But no, that's just the lower resolution. Beyond that, the system was heating up quite a bit with all the background downloads, and the vent on the top was emitting a not unpleasant electronic smell. The type of game we were playing didn't seem to affect things, whether it was Cyberpunk, Mario Kart, or Welcome Tour, but the smell settled down, and it's natural that this more powerful system will run a bit hotter than Switch owners are used to. We never found the fans distracting, but it'll be interesting to see how they react to more intensive games further into this generation. If you're coming to this directly from Switch 1, you'll notice the warmth though, especially if you switch to handheld after a long session in the dock. Battery life was a thing that concerned us at first, with the percentage ticking down at a noticeable rate while playing Welcome Tour. Our testing so far shows Nintendo's 2 to 6 hour estimates are on the money, although you'd think that something as simple as Welcome Tour might be closer to 6 hours than the 2.5 we got out of it. And if you were asking, yes, we've enabled the charge to around 90% option in system settings, which supposedly prolongs the lifespan of the battery. We'll see if it lasts the generation, but we have no reason to assume it would be worse than those in the old Switches, which in our case are still going strong. Overall, business as usual describes our first impressions. Switch 2 is familiar, easy to use, and for the most part, everything just works as you'd expect, only faster. The understated circles of blue and red beneath the analog sticks mean it's less outwardly playful than the previous model, but we don't see that as an issue, and we also quite enjoyed the sparkle in the gunmetal-like frame. Now though, let's talk about the screen, because the one on this handheld is a winner. If you never upgraded to the Switch OLED, your love will be unreserved. But even for OLED aficionados addicted to the deep blacks and incredible contrast, the largest 7.9-inch screen feels more like a sidestep than a backstep. However, after a week with it, our snobbery at the dark grays that we know could be jet black on another screen hadn't left us. There's no getting around it, OLED is just better. Switch 2 simply can't match the impressive darkness of an OLED panel with individually illuminated pixels, especially when you turn automatic brightness off. But looking side by side on our unit, the colors pop almost as well, and the resolution bump from 720p to 1080p keeps the new screen from feeling like a downgrade. HDR, high dynamic range, a new feature with Switch 2, hasn't really wowed us at any point after a week with the console. Then again, some of us are accustomed not just to the contrast of Switch OLED, but also an OLED TV and the hot HDR media it displays. If you've never experienced those bright lights, who knows, perhaps an eye-popping revelation awaits. But of all of the Switch 2 upgrades, whether on the console screen or the TV, HDR is the least noteworthy. In motion though, Cyberpunk helped put our doubts about the screen to rest. VRR seemed to be keeping everything smooth at 40 frames per second, and it's lovely, even if the nagging "oh, but OLED" thought doesn't go away. We'll definitely be eyeing the inevitable upgrade a couple of years down the line, and we'd also take a smaller bezel in an ideal world. But now let's shift our focus to the two things attached to this screen, being the new Joy-Con. The original Joy-Con became a real bugbear. Of the 7 this reviewer had acquired over the years, only 2 didn't drift. The others just were unusable. It will take several months to see if similar issues arise with the new Joy-Con, but they make a decent first impression, even if the smoother sticks look and feel worryingly familiar. As with any controller, your mileage will vary depending on multiple factors: hand size, overall dexterity, what you're used to, ailments, and more. The increased size is a godsend. The metal SL and SR buttons are much chunkier and more comfortable. There's no micro-switchy clickiness here, which maintains the premium feel. The face buttons are bigger and feel a bit better, and the fabled C button, well, it's a button. More on that in the game chat section of the review. Welcome Tour delves into the improved HD rumble, something we hope more games make use of, and change the theme that was on Switch where it was either off or rattling your feelings out. It's a subtle thing, but impressive nonetheless. The Joy-Con themselves attach firmly, are easily disengaged, and can even be put on back to front. We'll be waiting to see a game from someone that incorporates that gameplay element. Mouse mode is the other headline addition. Turn them on their side and they become optical mice that behave exactly as you'd expect. It's a neat trick, and for certain inputs, those involving fiddly menus for example, it'll be useful, but it's up to the devs to make good use of it. Welcome Tour showcased various uses, and well, it was a mixed bag. For some games, the precision of using it on a leg or the cushion of an armchair sufficed perfectly, but for others we needed the screen in tabletop mode and a proper table. Using it as a straight-up mouse in Civ 7, the lack of a scroll wheel led to some minor frustrations that it wasn't exactly a mouse. We personally wouldn't want to use mouse mode for an entire game, but it's a neat novelty and it works just fine 95% of the time. We still don't see ourselves ever choosing Joy-Con over Pro Controller when that's an option, and the original Pro Controller still works with Switch 2 just fine, although you can't wake your system with it. However, we can play Switch 2 for hours at a time with these, and not have pain shooting up our arms. And unlike their predecessors, we've had no connection drops with the dock sitting discreetly behind the TV. Aside from the slightly dull colorways available at launch, the Joy-Con 2 are a very welcome upgrade in all departments. And although we cannot believe Nintendo would put a new generation of drift-plagued pads, not after the years of trouble the last ones caused, we'll get back to you in the future with an update. As we mentioned in the Welcome Tour review, the way they highlighted the new mechanisms in that software suggests a confidence that we won't be seeing class actions in the years to come. It's a fingers crossed scenario, unfortunately. Oh, and you can pull the controllers off the console fairly easily without pressing the release button by gripping the bottom and yanking. The dock is thicker and more imposing than its predecessor, although the rounded edges keep things looking friendly. It's got a fan in it this time, but during our time with it, at no point did it feel like the dock was straining. The back clips on it in a similar fashion to the OLED model's dock, and the cables plug in tightly enough. We would have preferred another meter or two on the 1.5 meter USB-C cable connecting the dock to the power adapter, but otherwise it's a very familiar setup to anyone with a Switch. The little boop 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 noise the console makes if you power it on while it's in the dock helps give this lump of warm tech some personality. Plugging in the dock and slipping the system in for the first time, it detected that the TV it was connected to supported HDR and prompted us towards the calibration screen. It took some tinkering with the TV settings to make sure everything was just at the right levels. But more obvious was just the overall crispiness of the new console on an UHD screen. The resolution bump makes Tears of the Kingdom's mossy green cave textures look incredible, and anybody who jumps between PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and a Switch need no longer wince. Switch 2 obviously can't compete in a face-off with the PlayStation 5 Pro, but the little system holds its own. Cyberpunk offers performance versus quality options, but we found ourselves picking performance every time. Simply put, you're never gonna get the visual clarity of top-flight PC hardware out of a portable like this, and with the quality option offering only modest improvements in the scheme of things, we'll take a smoother experience in any action game. Again, straight comparisons against PlayStation 5 won't be favorable to Nintendo's machine, but PlayStation 5 isn't portable, is it? And the gap between Switch 2's output and the big home-only consoles, whether due to the DLSS magic in the dock or scalable smoke and mirrors and excellent art direction on the dev side, is far closer than you might expect. Tech heads going in with appropriate context and expectations will be pleasantly surprised, and Nintendo-only gamers, they'll be over the moon. Nintendo has noisily tooted its integrated game chat service, free for everyone until March 2026, after which it will be exclusive to NSO subscribers. And despite skepticism from pretty much anybody who's been gaming online for the last decade or two, we have to say that it's pretty seamless. Hitting that C button brings up the game chat menu at any time to create or join rooms, and the connections are quick. The built-in microphone functions as advertised, isolating your voice from across the room, managing to differentiate claps from other non-vocal noise, and filtering out music and ambient audio. There's a text-to-speech option now, and speech-to-text works better than expected too. Not perfectly, but it does the job. The frame rate on other players' shared screens is pitiful, but it works well enough to communicate what it needs to. And from Team NL's testing, game chat had zero effect on the smoothness of our own gameplay. Those with cameras took precedence in the video feeds. Up to 4 can be displayed with a maximum of 12 people in any game chat, and a great time was had by all. In fact, playing through Knockout Tour and a few battles, we realized that we were essentially enacting Nintendo's game chat reveal segment from the Switch 2 Direct, pointing out P-switches, asking questions, getting tips, ribbing each other as we launched red shells repeatedly up tailpipes. We had become Nintendo's rooftop party people. It all just works. No headsets, no hassle. Game share is the same. We tested with Fast Fusion, and whether local or online, it worked as advertised. Obviously, with streaming, you'll run into lag, and the visual quality will be fuzzier. But for a little race or two, it was perfectly functional and as unobtrusive as you could hope. Nothing game-changing then, but quick and easy communication with your online friends without the inconvenience of connecting headphones, which you can still do Bluetooth or wired with the new Pro controller, is very useful. And while we imagine Nintendo will refine things with updates following a real-world use and feedback, it's a very good start. What's also a good start is this system's strong launch lineup, which is nicely varied. Check out our reviews in the description below for our individual verdicts on those plus more. But even without that, Switch 2 arrives with perhaps the most impressive library of playable games in console history. Backwards compatibility with the vast majority of Switch 1 games means that there's literally hundreds of great games to play right out of the gate, and it seems even ones not advertised with Switch 2 specific patches are benefiting from faster loads and better frame rates. It makes you want to dip into your back catalog and play through your favorites again, a good sign for anyone sitting on an enormous Switch backlog. It won't be across the board, but generally speaking, Switch 2 helps iron out unstable frame rates in older games. Then there's the Nintendo Switch online library of retro games, now rebranded as Nintendo Classics, which has over 300 titles from the last 4 decades of gaming, with expansion pack subscribers getting access to the Switch 2 only GameCube catalog too. A quick blast around Big Blue and a look at the Wind Waker title screen with the CRT filter whetted our appetite for more. It all performs as you'd hope, with NA and EU versions of the games both available. In terms of a day one offering, the quality and breadth of games playable on this console is staggering. Accessing those games come at a significant cost though, and that feeling of familiarity from the form factor to the UI means that the novelty starts to wear off quickly. Or more accurately, you very quickly acclimatize to the clarity of the image, the smoothness of the motion, the speed of the menus and eShop, while you're still smarting from the $500 hole in your wallet. It's very odd to see Nintendo usually unwilling to engage in tech talk, tooting the specs of the system in a game like Welcome Tour, which explicitly turns the act of discerning frame rates into a minigame. But it's a necessary move when you're lacking differentiators. Then again, after seeing how Switch 2 handles Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, it's hard to imagine Pokemon fans feeling good about playing the upcoming Pokemon Legends CA on an original Switch. And with games like Splatoon 3 getting specific patches, it's very likely we'll see even more improvements to old favorites. Going back to the OLED, which is still a lovely little machine, the speed of pretty much everything outside of gameplay, from loading old favorites to album screenshots, feels interminably sluggish. The software price increases and the economic climate hurt, but taking everything into consideration in this honeymoon period, the base Switch 2 still manages to feel like a worthwhile value proposition to us. The upgrades are worth it. Game chat is a quaint but convenient little addition. The old library looks and feels better, and the new games are great. It all just works. So, in conclusion, should you go out and get a Nintendo Switch 2? Whether Switch 2 has enough out of the box to keep you going after the novelty of seeing your old games looking and running better than ever is the big question. Fortunately, the launch lineup is doing a great job of keeping one busy and giving the significant bump in all departments and the surprising utility and grins that game chat brings to the table. This is a worthwhile upgrade to a trailblazing system. Mario Kart and Welcome Tour elicit grins in the patented Nintendo style, and third parties are delivering a rich software bounty too, although you may as well have played those elsewhere already. There's a question mark hanging over those smooth new Joy-Con 2 sticks. Only time will tell on those, although the magnets and mouse enhancements are classy touches. The LCD screen is decent, enough of a size and refresh rate upgrade to not feel like a massive downstep from the OLED model, although purists who aren't in a hurry to play Mario Kart or Donkey Kong Bonanza may want to wait for an inevitable refresh down the line. Battery life falls near the lower end of acceptability, so hopefully future models can improve on that too. Switch 2 is extremely slick though, which instantly makes its predecessor feel slow and look very fuzzy. It makes your old games look and play better, and it's got enough quirks and quality of its own. Nintendo is on a very wobbly tightrope between surprise and delight and more of the same, and they've done a decent job of walking it, the best you could reasonably hope for at the least. The investment is sizable, but as holds true for almost all of the company's consoles, if you love Nintendo games, you won't regret it. We here at Nintendo Live give the Nintendo Switch 2 a 8 out of 10.